Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world, away from the numbers,
Hello, how do you do? We are the boys in white and blue, and we're back for another episode of There's Still Time, the AFTN Soccer Show, broadcasting on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. I'm Michael McCall.
I'm Steve Pander.
I'm Zachary Adam Eisenhammer.
I'm Navid Mashinchi.
It's a quiet week. It's going to be a short podcast. Not much to chat about, really, is there? I guess maybe there is. What a week. Where do you start? Which is one of the things that we were pondering for this whole show. So I've looked at how we can do this because obviously there is a lot to talk about. I felt on Thursday night the big talking point for the show on Sunday was going to be that loss to Pacific FC and how the team bounced back in MLS play on Sunday. Now, both of those things will be covered tonight, but sandwiched in between that, Marc Dos Santos and his brother Phil Dos Santos were fired. Not at 5 o'clock on Friday, as some of us had joked on Thursday night, but early Friday afternoon as well.
People didn't get that when I tweeted it out.
No,
Right, I saw that. I didn't get it at all.
I guess they don't think it's bad news, so they wanted to get it out a little bit early.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Well, I'm assuming they probably want to get it out for the 3 o'clock Sports Center. That's
Yes.
Local for us at 6 o'clock in Ontario.
I mean, I'll be honest, it was terrible timing for me because I was still on the island and we were going from Victoria up to Nanaimo to see Caitlin's dad. We'd stopped off in Sydney. There was Mark's presser was planned for 1 o'clock. So I got us a nice seat by the water, beautiful view. Penny, our dog, and Caitlin were all settled. And then 10 minutes before it was set to start, Nathan sends a message going, the press conference has been delayed until 3 o'clock. And I was like, okay then. So I thought, we'll get in the car, we'll just drive. Then Har gives me a call to tell me that Mark has been fired. And there's still a press conference at 3, but now it's with Axel talking about the sacking of MDS and PDS, which I couldn't get on because I ended up being stuck in the highway in traffic and I couldn't even turn off to get on the call. So sadly I missed all that. But we're going to look at a lot of things tonight. I'm going to split the show basically into 3 parts. You can look at it kind of as past, present, future, if you want. I just think it's going to be a nice way to kind of scan. And we're going to kick things off really by looking at the catalyst that started this chain of events. The final straw, if you were, for Axel in terms of Mark being the head coach of the Whitecaps. And that is, of course, that game on Thursday, Canadian Championship. And 4-3, fantastic game. Pacific FC win that. And it was a game that always had the makings of being a banana skin for the Whitecaps. Mark told us on last week's show that he was taking the competition seriously, and you certainly can't say he didn't, because that was about as strong a lineup I think that he could have put out there. Overall, the performance though was poor. Pacific were always going to be fired up. They were from the start. The Whitecaps were flat. They looked to have very little spark. How they weren't fired up for this, I don't know, but maybe that was indicative, really, of other issues that has ended up seeing MDS fired. Could he maybe not motivate the team the way they needed to be? We've seen so many flat first halves. Now, I want to start with Zach, because Zach and me were the two of us that were at the game. And we certainly saw a different side for both teams at training on Wednesday. I think it's fair to say that.
Yeah, it was a tale of two halves, or two different training sessions. It was like night and day. The Pacific one, which we went to first at was 10 in the morning, up the beat. It was joyful. There was passion. You could see the genuine care between teammates and staff and coaches, and there was a great spirit about it. And then we got in probably 5:20.
Well, yeah, because the Whitecaps kept their training closed for the first 40 minutes. That's how seriously Mark was taking this. He didn't want any spies, although Pa thought we were spies for the Whitecaps. He was joking. We did not know that, as he's yelling at us to get out because we were Whitecap spies. And then he called us down, and I was going to say he gave us fist bumps and hugs. He didn't do that, of course, because of COVID protocol, so ignore that.
Yeah, that was quite enjoyable. But Whitecaps training was like passionless and not flat, but it was just like a bunch of people at work, like just doing their job, and there was not a lot of joy, there was not a lot of smiles, there was not a lot of
They probably didn't feel like being there. Probably didn't want to be there.
Well, there was not signs of camaraderie and whatever. It wasn't like there was no blows, or there was nothing like that. But just the spirit was the opposite. And it was quite telling.
At the Pacific one, we had Pa and Victor Blasco doing kind of sumo wrestling or old style Greco wrestling. That was fantastic.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. I mean, some people have listened to the extra podcast and just heard a little bit about Pa's passion and his approach, and some people probably know that from the past as well. But one of the things that stood out for me, I think we talked about this, you and I, just a little, but one of the things where you saw, and I know it's partly because it's a different level, I'm sure, or a different, the leagues there are different, and the clubs there are much different. But one of the things that you saw was Paul Mutika, after training, helping the people. I'm not sure if they were from Pacific or from the CSA, set up the advertising banners,
No way.
in the section, right?
Wow.
When's the last time you saw a coach? I mean, he didn't do everything, he didn't do it all, but he literally helped them figure a couple things out, or spread out the banners and get them, lined up or whatever. Just very, very, very very different.
The players also went in for their lunch, and Pa's like, "You're not sitting in, you're coming out, you're all eating it on the pitch because you need some sun." And I can't remember who it was. He said, "Especially you with your white skin."
Bassett?
Probably Ollie Bassett, to be fair, but I'm not sure he can go in the sun too much. He's a bit like me. So, I mean, we won't break down the game. We won't break down the goals. I think there was enough breakdowns for the goals in the Whitecaps' defence. But I want to get your thoughts on the game and the performance from both teams and just the overall result. So, I mean, Naveed, I know you were watching the game.
Yeah.
Just what did you make of it on how it played out?
Well, first of all, I want to say I wish I could be there with you guys, because it really is a historical moment for the whole BC soccer community.
Yeah.
And I think I was probably the only one in the US watching the game. And maybe the RSL scouts or analysts, whatever you want to call them.
Oh, they'd have been rubbing their hands.
Exactly. No, but overall, I mean, I wasn't able to watch it live, but I watched it literally, it was at midnight, 12. And just the first 10
that was
minutes.
when Axel was up ordering his Uber Eats.
Exactly, probably. Boy, the first 10 minutes, my head was all over the place. I was like, what's going on here? And obviously, I mean, I'm so delightful for Pa. I mean, the guys, and I haven't watched too many Pacific games or CPL overall. I was surprised positively. I mean, they just outperformed them for any aspect, tactically, passion, anything.
Yeah.
And the Caps, I mean, I feel bad sometimes for these kind of games. You can only look bad in these type of games when you come from a higher league level. But overall, I mean, it's just not acceptable. If you get scored on 4 goals, it's just poor.
I mean, the thing is, Steve, with Bustos being out, which, I mean, Pa had been cagey about in the build-up to it, but I think most folk knew he wasn't going to be out, and he is going to be out for a few more weeks. I thought that was Pacific's best chance gone. Also, Matthew Baldissimo had picked up an injury, so, I mean, he was out as well. But, I mean, they were fired up. They're always going to be fired up because of the fact that there's so many connections there, and a lot of them maybe have a bit of a chip in the shoulder. Someone like Caden Chung maybe feeling, you know what, I could have stayed at the Whitecaps and made a big run of it. But I mean, what did you make of the game, the performance from both sides, and just the overall result of it?
Yeah, like Vancouver never looked comfortable. That's the one thing about them. It was just and it was probably a lot to do with the way Pacific was playing to not let them get comfortable. But Pacific, I know Bustos being out and everything is like, you know, he's their kind of go-to guy, but they still have a lot of talent up front and a lot of interchangeable parts where it's not always this, you know, the one piece, it's the sum of the parts, and that's usually works out with all of them. But overall, I think the biggest thing was a lot of players wanted to prove that, you know, basically what Vancouver missed out on and what they could have had. Like, especially guys like, especially when Terran Campbell takes that penalty kick and snacks the ball away from whoever had it. That shows that how much he wanted to score. So yeah, and overall, I'm not overly surprised, but it's just the way it happened. If it was a loss, then that would be fine, but it's the way they lost the game.
They were totally outplayed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could tell those kids want it. I think, Michael, you talked about this on Twitter. Like, Jordan Haynes wanted it so bad. If you've seen his post since the game, like he wanted. It was such a point for him to prove that he could outdo his, you know, the club that kind of ultimately rejected him. Was so huge. Also, Steve, I just want you to know, in one of the conversations we got to have with Bustos, he mentioned how, I think it was this week or last week or whatever, in his memories on Facebook or social media or whatever, came up him winning the Umbrella Academy Residency Player of the Year award, and
he still remembered it fondly.
Yeah, how it brought back such good memories of his time in the academy and stuff. And so I thought you'd want to know that.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Like what Steve said there about, Bustos was out, but they've got all these other attacking pieces. If you looked at the benches, like Pacific had the likes of Diaz that could come on, and Blasco and Polizzi and Bassett and all these attacking things. You looked at the Whitecaps bench. So if Pacific had been trailing, they had guys they could have brought on that could have got them back into the game. You looked at that Whitecaps bench and you're like, well, Ricketts, but that's maybe it. It's like, who else was going to come on and turn that game around? Because they'd put all their eggs in their starting 11 basket and it hadn't worked out well. They had a little bit of fortune with the opening goal, and I mean, they could easily have been more than one goal down at half-time, but they were still in the game. And at 3-2, I still thought they would have what it takes to level, get it to penalties, and then whatever happens. But talking of penalties, fun fact, as I tweeted out, Pa didn't practice penalties with Pacific on the Wednesday because he said there was no need. He was fully confident his team would get the job done in the 90 minutes. And he was right. Whitecaps that we saw as well didn't practice penalties either, but that might have been in the closed bit. But before we move on from the game and talk about the fallout from it, Whitecaps related, I just want to mention quickly just about Pacific. The atmosphere was absolutely amazing. I mean, I know it came across well on the telly, but Zach,
big time
just
on the
us
telly,
sitting there. I was in the press box in the main stand, and because it's got metal flooring, folk were like constantly banging their feet on it, and it was just a crescendo of sound. The whole night was a fantastic experience. It was nice afterwards. We caught up with a few of the guys, Callum Irvin, Matthew Baldissimo, just loads of them, Polizzi and Blasco and Campbell and Chung. So it was nice to reconnect with all these guys. I hope that this win helps lead them to get bigger numbers into the stadium. Now, it didn't today. and I thought they might have got that bump coming on from the game, which I was a bit disappointed in, and they put in a great performance today. They won back to the top of the standings. So, I mean, anyone from the island that hasn't got out to many games, anybody that was at that game on Thursday, I find it hard that they won't want to go back just because of the way that stadium was absolutely bouncing. Yeah, what they're doing there is tremendous. I wish it was easier and cheaper to get over there. I'd be over so much. And I know, Steve, you've not been over yet. We have to try and get over. Got to get you over to a game there.
Definitely.
It was a special atmosphere. I agree with everything Michael said, and it was interesting to watch. I was in the big grandstand, the purple Maple Leafs,
the new one, yeah,
the new stand, which I've been in there before, but I was lower down than I was last time, and yeah, you could hear. I was in a great spot. I could hear TOP and Lakeside boys, and I could hear the Southside and traveling Whitecap supporters, and yeah, it was a special occasion. Really nice tifo from.
Yeah.
So you had a great view on the penalty then, because that baffled me. I'm like, still, I don't know how they got the first penalty.
The first one that was on the other side of the field.
Oh, you were on the other side.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You didn't think it was a penalty?
Oh, that was a clear penalty. Jake just took him out.
Jake took him. I mean, he took him out. I mean, I don't know, overall performance of the ref. I mean, just
yeah. He didn't have a great game. It felt,
and he's a VMSL ref. I remember him from my days. I think he's in the VMSL ref. Yeah, I think so. Seriously.
Although, if you want to talk about refereeing, some of the refereeing in the CPL today is questionable. But let's not go down that road.
Oh, actually, one thing I have to admit, you guys. Sorry, I have to say. So there was the first game I've watched, literally like on TV or their stream. Boy, the commentators. Yeah, the commentators. I lost it almost. I literally, like, the atmosphere was so great, so I didn't want to turn the audio off. But
it was Nigel Reid, wasn't it?
It was Nigel Reid.
Yeah.
But Nigel Reid's the.
Is he a better one out of the other ones, or?
He's actually. I feel like he's better because I don't like.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I don't like the other guy at all.
Okay, but yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. So that's all we'll talk about for the game, because I know that's not why most of you are here and what listening is. You want to talk about the fallout from it. I'm going to just go round you all. So I just want a quick yes or no for now. Did you come away from watching that game thinking that MDS should be fired? A lot of people online, and the online community certainly did. Obviously, so did Axel Schuster. So, I mean, did you think he should be fired? And did you think he would be fired? So let's start with Zach.
No, I don't think he should have been fired. I'm not surprised that he was. And we'll talk about that maybe more later.
Naveed?
Same as Zach. Literally same as Zach. Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah, I'm not quick on firing people. So I was, I thought that they might take the opportunity to fire him, but I didn't think he should be fired over one game. Especially a game that is like popped out of nowhere, and then the messed up with their schedule completely.
Yeah, right. That's interesting because I also agree, and we hadn't talked about this beforehand, so I was just curious. So all on the same page, which is very interesting. Might not make for a big difference of opinion for the listeners, but I'm sure there will be some things we don't all agree on as we go through it. So, I mean, let's talk about the firing process. And I'll just cue up our advertising. This firing process is brought to you by Uber Eats, delivering head coaches P45s, or whatever you call it here in Canada. The red slip that you get when you're fired.
Pink slips.
Pink
slips, yeah. We call them P45s. Just don't know why I threw that in. But yeah, the firing process. So according to Axel, on his press conference, that I felt was a little bit all over the place, full of a lot of contradictions, as we will talk about. It's 1 a.m. He decided to order some burger on Uber Eats. So first thing about that, I think we need to speak to Axel about his eating regime, because you shouldn't be binge eating burgers at that time in the morning. Really not good for your metabolism. Well, we'll cover that next time we speak to him. So he stayed up until 4 o'clock, probably with the indigestion from the burgers. I get that as well when I snack late at night. And he had an idea. And then he thought, I'm going to go to bed and sleep on it. And if I feel the same when I wake up, I'm going to act on it. I'll speak to some others and we'll see what happens. Obviously, he was furious. And you could tell he was furious at the game. He was just along from me. And him and Jeff Mallett were watching the game. I just thought it was a bizarre decision. Let's start with Steve on this one. Should you be making decisions at that time of the morning and then acting impulsively after a game?
Yeah, the thing is, when you want to sleep on it, usually you want to give it like 6, 7, 8 hours, not 3, 4.
Yes.
After having a burger, so that like whenever I have carbs at night, it's never a good sleep. So definitely not the right way to do it. But I don't know. I have a feeling. We'll always speak on it. I have a feeling that this was already kind of high in his mind, and he didn't need to sleep on it. He was just waiting for an opportunity.
Yeah.
To me, and so the opportunity at this point it was like huge. Like this was a disaster. Like, is it a fireable offense? Maybe in some likes, but I don't think this is the reason he was fired.
Well, I agree with Steve because I think as we've talked about before, there was no way that they were going to, nor did they want to extend MDS's contract at the end of this season. And
I'm not also sure that Mark wanted to stay either because he'd got himself a new agent.
Totally. Totally. But also, on top of that, they also knew that should the team do what they think it should or can do and make the playoffs, it puts them in an awkward public perception piece to not bring him back. So I knew that my perspective is they didn't want to bring him back. And as Steve said, this loss created a significant opportunity. Another piece of that conversation, not is it just the embarrassment, not just is it the losing in a cup game, losing to in the first competitive historic game against a BC rival. What are we calling the Ferryside Derby? That's what
Pa wants to call it. I still like the Salish Sea Derby.
Okay, whatever. I'll go with
I like alliteration. Ferryside makes no sense.
Don't talk back to Pa.
He will. As he said when we said on Wednesday at training, I said to him, "Just make sure you don't hurt Ryan Gauld." And he said, "I'm going to take out all the Scots," looking straight at me. So I just backed off a little bit there.
Scottish genocide. But no. Aside from all those negatives of losing this match, what this also does for the Vancouver Whitecaps is really hinders their budget plans and projections for the season. They plan to advance in this competition beyond what they did this time, beyond what they did the last time when they lost to Cavalry. And you know that the money people, which are significant people at this football club, are really, really not happy. And so
it could have cost us a Champions League run next year and the money that would bring.
Which is GAM and real money. And yes. Yeah. And so you know that this was a significant opportunity for them to take the action that they decided to take. But I agree with you, Steve, too. Not a great story. I know basically Axel was trying to tell the story of what he did. I don't think it was a great story. And Michael's right. No. The press conference was kind of all over the place and contradictory and kind of desperate and sad in certain spots.
It was a good thing it was in the summer because there were a lot of flip-flops going around.
Hey. Just keep those away from Russell Tiber and any bicycles that are sitting nearby. But I mean, Naveed...
that's a 10-year-old joke.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, the Canadian Championship has kind of cost the last 3 managers their jobs because Robbo, he didn't do well in the Canadian Championship, was canned pretty much shortly after it.
Right.
Martin Rennie had a trigger in his contract that if they'd won the Canadian Championship, he's automatically going to be back the next year. And then, of course, he didn't and was out. It depends how much stock you put in it. Now, Mark beforehand said the Canadian Championship for the club was an obsession. I think, though, the majority of the fan base, and we'll get into Mark and his kind of record and whether overall it was a good decision or not to look for someone new in a sec. But the Canadian Championship isn't held in as high esteem and as importance as the MLS and the playoffs and the MLS Cup. So folk are going to be looking in at this and thinking, I don't understand this timing. They're unbeaten in 8 games. They've got 1 loss in 2 months, I think it worked out at. For me, personally, I think the timing stinks. I don't think you get rid of a coach who's been through everything that he's been through with this team during the COVID era, who has got the team off the bottom of the standings to within touching distance of the playoff line, that are 8 games undefeated, are starting to turn a corner, have finally got the number 10, are playing not great football, but they're getting the results. I just think the timing stunk. I don't know what you think.
Obviously, I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, for MDS, like from his position, the timing. But one quote that I won't forget from the press conference from Schuster's was that he said, if we would have played LAFC that game 10 times, we would have lost it 8 times. And I mean,
And that's an unbelievable shot at the players.
Yeah.
yeah.
Your own
But I
players.
don't think he's wrong about it, though. I mean, let's be honest here. The games before, I mean, these 8 or 9 unbeaten games, let's be honest. I don't think out of, like, there were some of them they should have lost, to be honest. Like,
Well, yeah, we've talked about we rode our luck, and last week we rode our luck.
Oh,
Ryan Rodriguez, thankfully, didn't find his scoring boots until this weekend,
right?
Because LAFC could have been out of sight. But what it boils down to, though, Naveed, is they didn't, and it's like the Whitecaps won.
Exactly, no, 100%, and it's really unfortunate for Marc Dos Santos. I mean, the timing, as you say, Michael, stinks. But I have to agree with Zach. I mean, in terms of for the front office, it was a perfect opportunity to make this.
Yeah, I have the conspiracy thought in my head.
We like you for this.
So if they lost money out on advancing in the Voyageurs Cup, and they're thinking that they might make the playoffs, does Marc Dos Santos have a bonus in his contract for making the playoffs? So you fire him. That way you save the money on the bonus and you could potentially still make the playoffs. That's a massive, like, that's way out of left field or whatever, off the pitch or whatever you want to call it.
But it is in line, Steve. If the bonus paid was in line with what they would have to pay him out right now, then again, it's also these are people who are. I mean, the people who are making these decisions are money first people, which is not a crazy statement. It's in line with everything they've ever done.
But Axel was asked about that, and he's like, it had nothing to do with helping to sell the team and getting bums on seats. Clearly didn't work, looking at the attendance tonight, which was 7,500.
But Michael, come on. I mean, that's all.
I know.
They lie about a lot of stuff, about selling the team, putting the team up, giving it to their kids. I mean, you can't trust them when they sit and make those kind of statements.
Plus, if anyone has looked at the hidden fees in Uber Eats and stuff like that, then you know that they need the money for that. And also, they're sponsored by DoorDash. Why is he using Uber Eats? It's
I
was wondering that.
Of interest right there.
I'm sure the marketing people were not happy about that.
Yeah. Like, as bad as that performance was on Thursday, Steve, simply for me, this was not the right time or place. Now, if they'd done this mid-July, after that 4-0 loss to RSL, 8 games they were winless by that point, that would have made a lot of sense. That made so much sense to me that I wrote my article of candidates that could replace Marc Dos Santos back in July, which is why it was up and published within 10 minutes of them announcing his sacking.
Yeah, and lots of people were asking about that.
Yeah, I had to sit in the car and amend bits. It'd have been up 1 minute after if it hadn't been for that.
Michael, didn't you say that one of the reasons why that didn't happen at the time was they weren't going to fire him while they haven't gotten back to BC yet?
Yeah, they wanted to give him the chance to take the team home. But if they'd got rid of him then, I would have said, you know what, this team is going nowhere. They're on a run that's not doing anything. I think they need to get fresh blood in. That is genuinely how I felt back in July. I would have said that to Mark's face, that I did not feel that. I thought he had this team going. I thought he had turned a corner. Although Axel let's just read some more of his comments from the press conference. He said he felt the team could have been on an even better run than their 8 games unbeaten. And yeah, some of those draws could have been wins. I don't disagree with that. But he said, this project needs another push, some new life. Things are not going in the right direction yet. They were climbing the table and heading into the playoffs, so that was confusing. He said things weren't developing fast enough, so that's fair enough. Too many draws, maybe not enough wins. And he said it was a wake-up call for everyone. But what kind of wake-up call is it when you can't really get rid of the players or bring new guys in just now because the transfer window's closed? I guess it's maybe referring to, are you wanting to be here in the future? You need to get your fingers out and do better. Now, MDS, now, I don't really remember seeing too many press releases that have a quote from the manager that's just been fired, but the Whitecaps one did. I also don't remember too many head coaches the day after appearing on local news to give a little video as well. But MDS was on CTV News on Saturday night, and he said he kind of expected that he was going to get the push after the loss to Pacific, because he said that somewhere recently the front office, the owners, whoever, had lost trust in him, and he had lost trust with them. And he said that basically it's like a marriage, so this was a divorce. Now, to me, that's a very telling dig. The relationship between him, Axel, the owners, that they had broken down.
When would that be, though? That's what I'm thinking. When is that time? When did it start? Where?
He said a while ago. I thought he said a while ago.
Yeah, well, yeah, he said... I think he said a while. He might have said recently. I'd have to read my tweet again, but...
So for me, the whole trusting back and forth, I have a feeling it's more to do with the trusting of Nicholas Overhaul. Nick Overhaul or Nick, I don't know which one.
Nick Overhaul.
Nick Overhaul. So he is an analytics guy. And analytics guys have certain players they want on the pitch. And if the coach has trust with another players, then that will go against what they feel is the right. Now, a couple of players that MDS has been starting recently that probably goes against analytics, I'm assuming, is Andy Rose and Jake Nowitzki. And those players are probably, they don't fit to what the ownership, I keep saying ownership, management wants on the pitch. But those are the things that I see that are the biggest factors that when it comes to the communication, is that most likely it's not really ownership. I think it's more management, and analytics is always, if your coach isn't analytical, then you're always going to be going, because management has, have you guys seen the movie Moneyball?
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Actually.
So remember Moneyball, remember halfway through the year, he traded a whole bunch of players that the manager wanted in the starting lineup. He just got rid of them, traded for nothing basically. So it's that kind of thing that where a coach who doesn't have the same views as what an analytics management have will, it'll cost him his job eventually.
Yeah, but that would mean that Schuster really weighs in the numbers, and I mean Lee really.
But he does if you listen to the press conference.
Yeah, especially the 8 out of 10
he started
comment.
talking about like goals against and that's
all
even in the cornerstones that he talks about. It's like they want to allow one goal against in a game and stuff like that.
And it's the whole thing about expected goals against and expected goals scored.
And
he's never mentioned those things, but the 8 out of 10 that told me that's like an analytics thing that they probably did some models, and 8 out of 10 times they wouldn't win that game, but they were able to win it.
That's probably true, and I think where the club are wanting to go, I don't know. I don't think MDS would have been back next year, like Zach said, and I don't think he may have been the right person to carry things on next year with where the club want to go. Let's just finish this part off by looking at the MDS era. I'll go around to each of you. We'll start with Zach. How will you look back at the MDS era at the Whitecaps? Because I don't think history will probably look back too favourably on it.
No, Naveed can break down the stats or talk about 22 wins in 88 games or whatever. Here's the thing. The way I view this, Marc Dos Santos's time with the Vancouver Whitecaps, or Marc Dos Santos's time is similar to me to Carl Robinson, in the sense that both of them knew the limitations that they would have to work under coming to Vancouver, and they both came. They both have told me this. They both came because essentially, if you can go to Vancouver and you can achieve anything, you look good as a coach because everyone knows you're dealing with limited resources. That's why he came, or that's one of the reasons why he came, and it didn't work out for him. And so I'm a little bit concerned about what he's going to have to do next to kind of rebuild or start over again. But I think
we'll look at that in part 3, so we won't get too much into that.
For me, when I look back on his time, it's like he took a risk. He took a risk, and he lost. And I've maybe said this before on the show, Michael, but I've talked about this before. When he came here, the last time he came to Vancouver as an assistant coach of LAFC, I said, "Hey, I hope you get a chance in MLS." And I said to him, "But you'd never come here, right?" And he said, "Well, you never know." And I was like, "Mark, why would you come here? You know." He's like, "Well, you never know what's going to happen." And I mean, publicly, I think he'd say, no, he learned a lot and had a lot of positive things and did things he's proud of. But I think there's probably at least a tinge of regret of taking the risk and taking the gamble that he did.
The lure of being a head coach in MLS in Canada was massive for him.
Yeah, but the wages aren't great either.
Yeah, but I personally don't think this has any bad bearing on him. I think that he's probably was even less supported by management initially than Robinson.
No, he had Steve. He had
money.
He spent a lot more money than Rob.
No. I'm talking about initially. The initial first season, he barely got anything going. Like it was basically just rags and tags. Like there was very little that first year, and then you take into account the COVID stuff and not being able to play at home. That I think a lot of future teams will have a more understanding on what he went through.
But at the end of the day, he still brought all these guys in.
Yeah,
I mean, he is responsible for all the guys he brought in.
I don't think we'll never know how much he had to
before Axel came in, though.
Michael, he had sole responsibility for it.
Michael,
I know, but there was very limited options at that time. Like they were bringing in scraps because they didn't have time to bring. Remember that first year? He had a month to put a team together.
Yeah, he had to put it together quickly,
and whatever was left on the trash heap, basically, it was just like leftovers essentially.
I mean, Michael, you might not want to take the time to talk about this now, but this is a significant part of it because most people will say, yes, the Whitecaps gave him tons of opportunity because they gave him, 20 million or 20 million plus in transfer fees. But I think that is too limiting of a view because I think, yes, he probably did have more access to transfer funds than Carl Robinson did without doing all the math of who Robbo brought in.
Yeah.
But I still think he was extremely limited in how they use the MLS mechanisms to class tier players and to bring in better players. I think he brought in lots of players that they paid for, but they weren't like none of them, like barely any of them, like 1 or 2 or 3 have been TAM or above players. Maybe 4 or 5.
A lot of them have been from out with MLS, and that was something I spoke to him about.
Yeah.
And we didn't include it in the end in the interview that I aired. But basically, I said, how come these other teams get all the MLS transfers done in the league? And he basically just said, look, that's something I don't want to talk about just now. But he said, let's go for a beer and I'll talk to you about that. So that's definitely one of the discussions I am looking forward to having in the coming weeks with Mark, because there's a few things he wanted to talk to me over a beer about. So that's going to be interesting.
And the thing is the one thing I want to mention is that when they started spending money, that's when Axel was here. Like the serious money. They would spend a little bit here and there, but like the Lucas Cavallini, was he the right fit for what Marc Dos Santos wanted to do? Was he the proper striker that he wanted, considering the system they were using? So there were a lot of players there that might not have fit what he wanted to do, but they put it in there. So really, this is a story about like Axel being the guy, coming in after the coach was already hired, and eventually he's going to want his own coach.
Yeah.
No
At
matter
the end
what.
of the day, though, I mean, looking back at the 3 years, I mean, considering COVID and everything, I totally understand. It's been challenging for him, and it's not like he really had a fair shot to showcase his abilities to manage a team properly without the 10 and all that stuff. But still, I can't think of one performance where I was like, okay, that was great. I literally can't think of a game within the last 3 years where I was, okay, this is awesome. So this is like, I literally can't think of a game.
It didn't.
It's
It
been-
didn't. Never,
wasn't
never passed in the
complete
Vita eye
games.
test.
Complete game, yeah. Literally,
Yeah.
like I can't think of
You had
one
good
game.
halves, but trying to think of a complete game.
Yeah.
I mean, his record in MLS was 22 wins, 18 draws and 37 defeats. There's also 2 embarrassing Canadian Championship losses. The playoffs weren't made. Other negatives, for me, there was a string of poor signings, especially in year one. You really have to question what the scouting network was at the club. Now, that did get overhauled, and no pun intended with Nick Overhaul, but he's now set the club up by putting things in place that's going to make that better.
Right.
But some of the guys he brought in, Jasser Khmiri, you've got to ask questions. They were not
Ardaiz.
MLS quality. Yeah,
Ardaiz.
Ardaiz.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's what I'm talking about, that they probably had to rely on other people giving them information. I don't think there was a scouting network.
There wasn't, but Robo dealt with it. I mean, he dealt with it his way.
Yeah,
But he probably had a better network set up already. That's
we
the
had
thing,
one
like-
network.
The
set
one
up.
network.
He liked to go to a
But-
lot.
But still, I mean, it worked out a bit better for him than.
Well,
I
yeah,
think.
it did.
Yeah.
But Mark put together a team that didn't feel like it had an identity. It didn't feel like it had a system. He wanted them to play high press. Steve, when he first arrived and we spoke to him on his first day, he was like showing us on the table how he wanted the team to play. He was showing
I remember
videos.
that. I remember.
And
that, yeah.
it was so promising. And in each of his 3 seasons, he has not delivered that kind of style of football. And it's either because he brought in players that just couldn't do it, or they just weren't good enough to do what he wanted. But the defence was poor. It's been a bit better, but it's still poor. There's been some really baffling team selections over the years. I mean, this season in particular, so many games, even the one at BC Place, where you have 2 goalkeepers on the bench. Now, that could be sending a message to others in the team. He spoke a lot about players not performing at training, so he kind of set out that stall as well. So, I mean, there were a lot of negatives from his time here, but there were some positives. He was starting to turn things around. Now that he'd finally got a number 10, I mean, he said to me a couple of weeks ago, we had it on the show, he said that he finally feels, after all this time, that he's got the team that he wanted. Now, I'm critical of how he was in year one, because I think that was a shambles and he just didn't take to things well. Maybe it was because he didn't have a lot to pick from, but maybe it's because the club don't like doing transfers within the league. Some of them haven't worked out to the best. But with everything he went through, and with COVID and not having the home games, I think he was starting to turn it around. But that said, I'm not sure he was the man to take them forward. So if they'd got rid of him in July, I'd have said, no, that was fair enough. If they parted ways at the end of the season, I'd have thought that was fair enough. I just felt you had to give him, if you'd got back home, you've got to give him to the end of the season. You can't do this now. There's been injuries as well. He's been unfortunate. He's had no DPs really, like proper MLS DPs this season until Gold came in. Ali Adnan, you could maybe say, was he a proper DP or not? But he didn't have him, so then you have to let him go. Godoy has been like just so bad with injuries. Would he have helped turn things around a bit? Would he have stopped some of those games that ended as draws? Cava's injury, being away with Canada, everything like that. A couple of questions just to end this. First one on Mark. We'll start with Naveed. Was this job too big for him? or was he just not good enough for the job?
I think it's 2. I would go with, I think, I mean, he knew the risks, as Zach said, but he lost at the end of the day. That's what I think.
Steve?
Yeah, I think he would have been good enough, but I still don't feel like he got the support he should have gotten at the beginning, especially when they were turning it around. There was just not enough time, and you guys can remember that they just kept delaying. Oh, we'll make a big deal next transfer window. It was next transfer window.
Yeah.
How many times now? I guarantee you, if it's a coach like Marc Dos Santos, he wants to get the right players in as soon as possible.
Yeah,
he's not the one delaying it from one transfer and then to another. So I feel he was probably good enough. What was the first option you said before?
Was the job just too big for him? Like I personally feel that he underestimated what task he was coming into here.
Yeah, I think so too. I think like we talked about before, like years ago when they made those changes, it was basically a brand new. It was like almost like an expansion team, and without having the benefit of an expansion draft, where you could bring in some MLS veterans and stuff like that. So
because he had to blow the team up because of how that previous season ended and all the infighting and
but you usually don't see that a lot on all these MLS teams when coaches. I mean, that was
no, he didn't have to blow up the team. The team was already blown.
Yeah, that's true.
He was just going through the rubble to find pieces.
Yeah, and I mean, what do you think, Zach? Did he not really appreciate the size of job that he was coming to, or was he just not up for the job in hand?
No, I think he was up for it. I think he knew it. I've heard and read some debate on whether or not some of those things you guys talked about, the scouting network and all that, was that really him? And I do really think he played a very significant role in making those things happen.
Yeah.
Not to say that Schuster and Panis, did nothing on those things, but I think he is a key factor in them. So yeah, I don't think it was too big for him. I think the limitations and I want to talk about this a lot, and I know you won't want to, Michael, and we've talked about it before. Maybe we can talk about it another time. But what Steve's talking about the situation he came into, you have to talk about how that situation became and who's responsible for it. Because the bottom line, and I'll try and only say this once, Michael, on this podcast,
because it's going to be a long show as it is. So don't go over old history.
I know, but the bottom line is, Vancouver's had now 4, 5, 6, whatever coaches, 7, 8, 9 interns, whatever.
Yeah, if you include all
in
those.
MLS.
No.
And the people who have not changed are the people who need to be changed, and they're the ones they're the ones responsible for the environment that Marc Dos Santos walked into and made things difficult for him, Steve, as you mentioned at the beginning, because the cupboards were bare because of their approach before, to go a cheaper route, to deal with one agent or one agency or whatever. And I'm really frustrated of continuing to read this narrative online that is, in my opinion, false. That setup was what's the word I'm looking for? Fraudulent or
corrupted or like something.
Yeah. Like there are people online who have said, because we've seen problems with this kind of scenario before, something must be wrong with this now. And they don't understand that it's commonplace I can't speak for other sports, but commonplace in the world of football and even commonplace in MLS. And yet, because they've heard of experiences of it being dodgy other places, they called that situation dodgy. But even if it was dodgy, I don't think it was, because I've asked people involved and they've told me it wasn't, and I trust them. But even if it wasn't dodgy, that system was set up by the executives of the Whitecaps. They chose to go that route, partially, I think, because of finances, partially because it was path of least resistance.
But are we talking about like Robbo using the one agency?
Yes,
what we're talking about. Yeah,
and that's what left the cupboards bare, as Dos Santos would say when he showed up, because they just chose to part ways from that, and all those players left because they were leaving. Their people were leaving, or they felt their people were disrespected and they didn't want to be a part of the club anymore. But so you can't talk about, like, Steve, I agree with you. It was difficult for him at the beginning, but that wasn't his fault, and it wasn't the fault of the previous coach. It was the fault of the people who set things up to function that way.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying, like, he didn't blow up the team. He came blown.
Yeah.
And another point I wanted to say actually before this, I mean, it makes me sick looking back, and I'll never forget this. The interview of Jeff Mallett when they presented Marc Dos Santos and talking about, how we want to get to a better, like, this is not good enough. We want to get better and better and better. And when I zoom out and look at the big picture, where are we at right now? Really, like the last 3 years.
We apart from having an actual number 10 that looks like a proper difference maker, in the last 3 years, that's about the only big positive, and possibly that they've got a better structure for scouting.
Was that the same time where they talked about getting back to the top third of spending as well?
Yeah, I think that was at the Southsiders meeting, or the fans meeting that they had, that they talked about that.
The thing is, this ownership group wants just to establish buffer zones, and they were able to keep the Marc Dos Santos buffer going for a long time because of external circumstances like COVID and stuff like that, and just keep delaying that transfer window and stuff like that. Oh, he didn't have a good transfer window, or we weren't able to get the number 10 we wanted, so we'll just give him a little bit more time. It's just a matter of, and now they have the Axel buffer zone too, so they have a lot.
You also have the fact, like, Axel's talked several times about, we wanted to wait for this number 10, and we did, and now it was worth it because we've got the right one. Because Ryan Gauld has started so well, it plays into that was the right thing to do, to wait all this time till we got Ryan Gauld.
3 years.
There was other players, as much as I love Ryan, there was other players I'm sure you could have got in that window that would have done just as good a job.
Well, but the thing was, the 4.5 years, over 4.5 years between Pedro Morales and Ryan Gauld at Vancouver, the reason it took so long wasn't because they were looking that whole time. It was because the owners realized if they don't do something, things are going to get even worse than they already are, and they're not in a good place.
Well, yeah, because with the pyramid system that I hope to set up, they could end up in the VMSL. But let's just end this part with one final question. And I wanted to ask this on Axel's conference call on Friday, but I listened to it in the car, but I couldn't ask anything because I didn't know when I was going to be able to pull over or whatever, so I didn't put my name in the queue. No one asked it. I did ask Axel this when I spoke to him, I think back in June. How much blame does Axel Schuster have to shoulder for where the team is just now and how they're playing and all these things that aren't going right? Because ultimately, he's the guy that is overseeing all these signings and the additions. And if Mark's getting the blame for not motivating the players the right way, or not getting them to play the right way, or it's not the kind of players, Axel's been responsible for bringing a lot of these in. But when I spoke to him a few weeks ago, I'd asked him, did he feel he'd given MDS the tools to succeed and to make this team a playoff team, even if they hadn't got the number 10? And he categorically said yes. And we talked about it, we disputed it on the show. So quickly to finish this part off, we'll start with Steve. Does Axel have to shoulder a lot of blame here as well? And should his work be under scrutiny right now?
Well, he's the next guy that's going to be under scrutiny now. Because he only has so many opportunities to hire a coach or have a coach in front of him before everything gets thrown out. Like, essentially, the delay in getting the proper players, that was the big issue. Like, the problem is at no point did he seem to have initially a plan to get it. Because if you're spending all that money on a striker, you should be bringing a number 10 in around the same time. And it's not even. You don't have to get the best number 10. Just get somebody that fits the model of a number 10.
Someone that can feed your striker.
Yeah, and they have never they've even been able to sign a lesser known player to play number 10, like maybe a one level lower than a Ryan Gauld would be. So they weren't ever able to bring somebody that fits the profile that could help support when you spend all that money on a striker. So it's just a lot of inability to like put a team together right now. I think they've finally done it. But I think it's like they're about 3 transfer windows behind of where they should be.
Yep, that's a fair shout. I mean, Naveed, do you think Axel should be under scrutiny just now as well?
A little bit. I mean, to be fair, last year, I mean, it wasn't even a proper season, so I don't think you can really
And
judge.
I like, it is hard to get players to relocate when they don't know if they're going to be in Vancouver, if their wives can do. So, I mean, that I do get.
Oh,
Right.
he's just like Marc Dos Santos. He's had a lot of obstacles in his way too. So I
Right.
don't 100% blame him either.
No, I mean, like Steve said, I mean, he's the next one, and if I don't think you can't get this one, the next head coach wrong, because then everyone is going to be on him. That's for sure.
Yeah, because that is his man then,
Yeah.
Zach.
Yeah, and he's already said that they need to get a head coach that fits the team, not a head coach who will change the team to what he wants, which is kind of telling.
Yeah, it does feel that Axel and the club want to go in a certain direction, especially focusing on the young guys. But Mark, as I think most head coaches would do, it's like, I want to put a team on the pitch that's going to win. And if that means not playing the young guys, then so be it. The problem is then if you don't win and you're not playing the young guys, you are in a difficult position then.
That's where I think Marc Dos Santos has the thing about mentality of he trusts a certain number of players. He trusts players. If you don't have his trust, he's not going to put you on the pitch. That's why we haven't seen guys like
season.
Theo.
It's
Theo
like
Bear
a
and those kind of
small
players.
core group of players that he used week in, week out.
Yeah, I agree with everything, Michael, that Axel is next in line. I wonder, I assume that he's been there long enough. He understands the dynamics. He understands who is bulletproof because they've lasted so long, or they have certain connections. And he surely has to understand that, he's the next in the line of fire. If whether it's the head coach, or I mean, I don't think they will. But if even like they didn't make the playoffs this year, like who they're going to hang it on? Vanni Sartini? I don't think so. They're going to hang on.
They'll hang it on Marc Dos Santos. That's why
for the start of the season. So I mean that's how it will be.
It will be like that. That's what they're going to hang it on at this point. They've already
I guess you're right. Axel is next year's scapegoat.
Yes, depending on how things go. But hopefully it won't come to that. The last thing I'll say in this part is just a couple of final things. Sadly, I didn't get to speak to Mark after that game on Thursday night because the CSA completely ballsed up the post-game press conference for everyone that was at the game. None of us were admitted to it, so we didn't get to speak to Mark. Zach and me had a chance to speak to him as he was leaving the stadium, but we were chatting to somebody else.
And he was like giving out autographs.
He was giving out autographs and stuff, and I really, if we'd known what was going to happen, I really wish that we had that chat. We did have a chance to chat to him on Wednesday, and we chatted for maybe 10 minutes or so, and then we left. Again, if I'd known it was going to be the last chance, I was going to sit and chat to him as Whitecaps boss. But I hung about a bit more and chatted about a few more things. But
was any of the things he was autographing pink?
Like, just quickly sign this. Oh, what is this, Rachel? But we'll talk a little bit about the future in part 3, and that's the future for the Dos Santos brothers as well as the future for the next head coach of the Whitecaps. That was the past covered. We're going to talk about the present next, and we're going to be back with that after this.
Hi, I'm Marc Dos Santos, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
I think I should make out with other people. This isn't a personal attack. I'm just trying to live my youth, and that doesn't involve making out with you. Don't take this personally. It's not about you, it's about me. It really is. It's all about me. It's not about you at all. Please stop making everything about you. It's only about me. Sorry for all this strife I caused you. Hope you can look past my flaws. But I think that we should. I think I should make out with other people. This is kind of a personal attack. Yeah, I'd say so. I'm just trying to live my youth, and that doesn't involve making out with you. I'm sorry for all those feelings, but
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's the final song. It's always that sad time of the month. It's the final song from our Artist of the Month here at AFTN for August from Sacramento, California, Destroy Boys. And that was their first ever song that they released in October 2015. I just thought it was a kind of fitting song. I like to try and find songs at time of the theme of the show. So this one was very apt. It was called I Think I Should Make Out with Other People. I'm not sure if that was the message that Axel gave to Mark and Phil when they got rid of them on Friday, but that is basically what the Whitecaps are doing. And the guy that the Whitecaps are making out with just now is Vanni Sartini. He is the interim head coach in charge of the team. Ricardo Clark is his assistant. Now, I wish Vanni all the very best. He is a lovely guy. He's a lot of fun to talk to. We'll obviously do our chats with him in the coming weeks, as we did with Mark. And strangely, I didn't think a couple of weeks ago when I was calling the FC Tigers Whitecaps under-23 game with Vanni on the sidelines for the under-23s, that just a few weeks later he would then be on the sidelines of the MLS team, but that is how it has worked out. And he's a great guy. Director of Methodology was where he was moved to at the end of last season with a task to kind of oversee the youth thing. Try and get this MLS2 reserve team set up that will be taking the pitch next year. He's a guy that's got a UEFA Pro license. But aside from being an assistant to Mark and a little bit of assistant in Italy, he's been a coach educator. He has limited coaching experience. I don't think he has what they're looking for to lead the team long term in MLS, but I guess you never know. If he gets them to the playoffs, if they're winning every week, could he be the guy, do you think, that they end up giving the job to? We'll look at other candidates in the next part, but do you think Vanni has a shot, or is he just interim?
I think he's just interim at this point. I think he's the guy that's just going to get everything going, maybe help with connecting the U23s to this team, some of the younger players. He is a developer, so it's probably a very similar type of coach that they're looking for, but they probably want somebody with more experience at this point.
Yeah, and a proven track record as well, Naveed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny actually. This timing kind of reminds me on. Remember when who got let go? That Brian Schmetzer came in.
Exactly.
And he got Lodero right after, and now it's kind of. I mean, no one would expect Brian Schmetzer to be. But
Schmetzer has had experience as a head coach before.
Yeah, he was with the USL team.
Yeah, Naveed Schmetzer was like the big.
Yeah,
coach.
US. Okay.
He became assistant coach in MLS.
I've heard a lot of positive things about Vanni Sartini in terms of, education and all. Like, he knows his stuff, that's for sure. And he's been an educator and been educating all these MLS pro coaching courses and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, he knows what he's doing. But I in the long run, I can't see it. But you never know in this game, man. As Michael said, what if he actually pulls? You saw today. Again, we get to it later, but what if he gets into a run and puts him in the playoffs? Never know.
Say they get to the MLS Cup, say they win the MLS Cup. It's like, how do you then turn around and say, oh, yeah, we're going in a different direction?
It'd have to be something massive for them to keep him. He's
right,
more.
Right.
I would actually compare him to like a Craig Dalrymple type, but with more experience. More experience and better. I'm not. When I compare somebody, I'm talking about the position, Zach.
Right.
You don't have to start shaking your head. I'm saying the position is similar, but
personality-wise, they're very different.
Yeah.
So, Steve, what do you mean? Like the position they held beforehand, or what?
Yeah, the type of
Craig was
the type of coach they are.
Yeah.
The type of coach they are, not the he probably for the rest of his career. This is what Vanni Sartini is going to be known for, and probably in the position of. And it's probably something he would rather do too than be the head coach of a team.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, he was in a strange position because Mark brought him to the club. He's friends with Mark and Phil, And then he's like, we want you to take over the team at really short notice whilst he's still doing stuff with the U23s. And I asked him after the game tonight just about the emotions that he'd been through. And I mean, it must have been a lot for him. I am delighted for him because he's such a lovely guy.
Yeah.
And his fans probably don't know him and know his personality that much yet. But as you get to know him, you'll find out what a wonderful person he is, and just very unique outlooks on life and in general. So hopefully we can get a bit of a sit down chat with him and do some of the more getting to know you things that we have done over the years.
The thing is, for Sartini,
of course.
He has been on the radio, like with TSN during the
preseason.
Yeah. So he has done interviews. So some people have probably heard him in the past, and he has been very charismatic when he is in those interviews as well. So he's a very good guy to talk to.
I was meant to speak to him a couple of weeks ago. Him and Dazzle, we had lined up a chat. We're going to speak about the U23s and the U19s and the path forward and stuff for that. But because things were so busy, I pushed it back for a couple of weeks. So not sure if that chat will be happening in the foreseeable future, but we'll see. But ultimately, what Ivani has been tasked with and what Axel said on Friday is playoffs are still the aim. That is where the club had set their stall out at the start of the season. They want to make the playoffs. If they get there, then they'll renew what the new expectations are for the season. I asked in the last part, how much blame do you put on Axel for stuff? We talked about blame put on Mark possibly as well. I mean, Zach, how much blame do you put on the players? How much do they have to shoulder for performances this season, but especially that Pacific performance? Because I've said this countless times. A coach can only do so much. Mark put his best team out on that pitch on Thursday night, and they were terrible. Now, is that because he's not motivating them?
I don't know about the motivation side. I think the one place where you can critique MDS is on some of his tactical approach and some of, I think, his instruction to players. We don't know all those details. We can guess, we can try and interpret the stats, all that kind of stuff, or, try and interpret what we're seeing with our eyes.
He's a very defensive minded coach though.
Yeah, which he's always been. That's
it's proved successful, but not at this level, and not when you're coming up against the quality of opposition.
Except for that was one of the things that Axel, I believe, pointed out, which was
right.
not good enough. But so yeah, I mean, the players do need to own it. I mean, that loss. I mean, when you listen to the supporters of the Whitecaps, they were embarrassed by how their team performed, and I think that speaks volumes.
Also, I should say at this point, I meant to say this in the first part. Pacific deserve all the credit, and Pamadou Ka as well. So it's not just the fact that the Whitecaps didn't turn up and play terribly. Pacific didn't let them play well.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I should say that as well.
No, we mentioned that in the first part where we said that while the Whitecaps never looked comfortable, and it was the Pacific that made them uncomfortable, their play. So yeah, I totally understand that. For me, the players, I feel, hold a lot of the blame, because if Marc Dos Santos is putting them a clear plan to do and they don't perform that, then it does definitely fall on them. And to follow that, because right from the beginning, we talked about it before. His first time he talked to the media, he lined up a whole bunch of stuff that he wanted to do on the pitch, from the midfield, the middle third, to the back third. He had it all planned out, like how we wanted.
Oh yeah, he showed us little triangles that they wanted to do, and it's like, again, did he bring in players that could play that though, or did he bring in players that he thought he could get to do that but hadn't been used to doing that?
Yeah,
and it all goes down to recruitment again.
Again, yeah, and it's just a matter of, were these his first choices, or did he have to settle for third, fourth, fifth choices? That's the big
that
thing.
As well.
And the thing is about him is, like, defending wise, what was the area that the Whitecaps weren't able to develop the whole time? It was the midfield. And when he talked about defending and the system that he wants to play, he wants to do most of his defensive work in that middle third.
Yeah.
Probably more than 60-70% he wants defending there. So it doesn't even get to the box or whatever, where the people defenders have to like do something to clear the ball. So for me, those are the major issues, and I feel like the players never really turned it on at any point. They would come off at halftime, which tells you that maybe it was just they weren't good at preparing the players, or maybe they over-prepared the players, but at halftime they were able to make adjustments, and they always came in the second half with better setup.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the small
simplified
things that Axel kept talking about, but
yeah.
I mean, the thing is, Naveed, so much of what went wrong in games this season was down to individual errors, and how much can a coach shape that, really? Because it's like, he doesn't expect somebody to kick a ball off Baldy's face and it go into the back of the net or whatever. So, I mean, there's only so much a coach can do.
Even
I feel the players do need to shoulder a lot of the blame.
100%. And the whole first half debacle throughout the season, I mean, that's also, I don't know if a coach can, I mean, what can a coach say? I mean, all you can say is, guys. Then it was
different tonight, but then was that just because they were fired up because what had happened? I guess the next game will be the telling one in that regard.
Right.
I mean, everyone was baffled about those first half debacles, and debacles is the best word for it.
Yeah.
I don't know how a team can be so different in two halves.
Yeah, I mean, personally, just based on my experiences, I mean, it's more from a player's point. I mean, once you cross the white line, you have to be switched on. I mean, that's just as simple as it is. And
they certainly weren't on Thursday.
Yeah,
I don't know what it was, but yeah. We spoke about Axel being quite contradictory in his press conference. I don't think it was a great one, just like Jeff Mallett's wasn't great when Mark Paness went. Axel's outlasted both the Marks. Who'd have had money in that? Probably me. He did say we need to work on the small things. Can Vanny fix that? We maybe got a glimpse of that tonight. And then he went on, as we kind of touched on, about allowing shots on target and the good job of goalkeepers and the defence, but then said the defence wasn't great. We talked about the 8 out of 10 games against LA, but they did get the results, so I don't know how you can look at that. And he wondered whether, or he was asked whether, was there going to be a distraction or a wake-up call for the team? And he wanted it to be a wake-up call. How would it affect the players? Now, we'd heard that there was some players that weren't a fan of Mark and weren't happy with the direction that the team was going. But then there's other players like Max Crepeau that's known him since he was like 13. He's known him for over 10 years, both the DeSantis brothers. Javane Brown clearly had a good relationship with Mark, and I think he would have been somebody that would have taken things quite hard. And I'm sure there's other players as well. Training on Saturday, I wasn't at it, but by all accounts, it was very, very subdued, which is good. You don't want to really see the players laughing and joking, but you'd maybe want to see a little bit of intensity. So
Andy Rose was basically family for him.
Yeah.
How about Rusty? That's a Q1, obviously.
Well, who knows with Rusty? But, yeah. I mean, tonight's game against RSL, we'll just finish off this part by looking quickly at that. We're not going to do our usual deep dive into the game. Axel talked about they needed changes. Could they get a wake-up call? Vanny spoke at the presser and said he wouldn't be making many changes.
That was the biggest. That was the wildest part there, where he says Axel says we need to make this decision now because we need to make the changes because of the things we see on the pitch. And then Vanny speaks and says, "Yeah, we're not going to make that many changes. They've been on a pretty good form right now, so let's just keep it going the way it is, and then we'll see it as the season goes."
It was. I agree with you, and it was awkwardly contradictory, but I think it was also partly because Vanny knew he had no time. So he wasn't going to.
He can't really, in 1 day or 2 days, you can't really stamp a lot of your.
No, I understand it, but there's still.
I agree with Steve. Yeah, I was in the car going, what?
But if he had said that I can't make any changes because there's not enough time before the next game, that's fine. But he said I can't make any changes because they've actually been on a good run.
Right, so but he's being honest, so I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you going to do?
Why would you change a team that's unbeaten in 8? That too much.
Right.
I mean,
I rewinded that part to see if Axel looked over at him when he said that.
The thing is, from reading between the lines, and it's you can take what you want by doing that always. But I did get the impression that there was maybe some players in the squad that Axel wanted in the team, and they weren't getting in the team for whatever reason. And Mark would maybe say it's how they've been playing at training, or the fact that they weren't fully fit. And it was interesting tonight. I mean, obviously Jake was injured and he was all iced up and wasn't able to do stuff at training. So they were short on fullbacks, but Bruno Gaspar finally got back into the lineup tonight as a starter, and like they had high hopes for him. So was he one of the guys that Axel wanted in the team? Florian Jungwirth as well. It's like, you've made that play for him. You want him in the team, surely.
Amazing how Gaspar's recovery just coincided with the firing. Was finally able to get healthy there, and Jungwirth was ready to go. That's to me, that's the most telling part. That the management wanted certain players on the pitch, and Dos Santos probably refused, that he trusted those particular players.
And I'll say now, if that did happen, and we're just saying a big if, I don't agree with that at all. The sporting director should not be making those calls or decisions.
That is happening a lot more than you think, especially in European teams where analytics is huge. Management makes a way bigger thing. It's happening a lot in other sports too, but it is happening more in football.
Yeah. No, I can't believe none of you mentioned that Vanni Sartini brought Christmas to August.
Oh yeah, the Christmas tree formation, which
that
I
was
like.
That was one of the most drastic things I think about. When he said, "I'm not going to make a lot of changes," I was like, "That's a pretty significant change, in my opinion."
And of course, Brian White was the fairy on top of the tree. I don't know what you guys have on the top of the tree. I usually have a reindeer, but yeah, it was an interesting and a weird game because I genuinely can't remember. I'm sure there's been lots over the years. I just can't remember any where it's been two interim coaches in charge. And as like Vanni was asked after the match, did he speak to Pablo Mastroeni about it? And he's like, yeah, because it's a weird situation that less than 48 hours ago, they both had different jobs. And now they're both leading their teams to different outcomes, it has to be said, in this match. Now, let's just quickly touch on Freddy Juarez leaving a head coaching job. Now, his contract was up at the end of the season, but he's left before the end of the season to join Seattle as an assistant. So a backward step, but you are joining, which, let's be honest, the number one team in MLS right now. And it maybe says a lot about what Seattle do and how they're viewed around the league when you're prepared to take an assistant's job there.
Baffling situation, to be honest. Strange, but like you said, I mean, I guess he rates being an assistant for Schmetzer higher than a future position at RSL.
Maybe he sees Schmetzer moving on in a couple of years, and if he's there, just moves into it.
Yeah.
No, that's not.
But I can't even see. Yeah, but I can't see him getting the head coaching at Seattle Sounders.
Yeah, I was
You
shocked.
want to be at a team that wins, and that's Seattle.
It is kind of shocking. There's got to be a little bit more to the story than we're getting. Because I was surprised because I first thought he was fired, and I was like, why are they firing him? They're kind of in and around the playoff.
Well, I got the press release saying that with immediate effect, Freddy Juarez was leaving the club. We wish him well in his new position. And it's like, what? And then I was Googling, and then I saw that some folk had said, we heard he's going to Seattle as an assistant. I was like, that can't be right.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's a strange one.
But for RSL, at least they got a coach that has coached in MLS before, so it's not that much of a. There was maybe a little bit of a dip, but more of a sideways move.
Yeah,
right.
Now the game tonight, it was a poor-looking crowd. It was confirmed in the end as 7,500. I don't know how much the upheaval has gone. That's like pretty much nearly half of what they could have got in. There's obviously the new mask mandates. There's the rising COVID numbers.
Well, let's be honest. It has to do with Thursday.
But it's also a Sunday night game, though. But it isn't a school night because the schools aren't in.
It's Thursday.
But
they could have had
the
tickets sold
Whitecaps
before that.
But they have a significant walk-up crowd.
Number one, the Whitecaps have never sold well in the summer. And number two is that a lot of people probably had things scheduled, not knowing the Whitecaps were going to come back. Like me, like I had things this whole week that I wasn't able to attend games at all because I already had things booked off.
Were you on a boat again today?
No.
Oh,
I didn't go to the game tonight. I watched it on TV because there was no way I could do that, the post game, and get back to do this show at a decent time. So ultimately, I took the call just to watch from home, and regretted it when the goals were going in. But yeah, maybe I should just stay away and they'll just keep banging the goals in. Who knows? We'll just quickly go through the game. So, I mean, there was a lot more spark in the first half. They had several chances. At the end, they went in 1 goal up thanks to a bizarre own goal in the 33rd minute, which TSN were obsessed with giving to Javane Brown. I was like, I have no idea why, because it clearly went off Silva.
No, Paul Dolan, once he saw it in the replay, he said that, yeah, it definitely looks like an old
But they
goal.
kept focusing on Brown, and then it came up his first goal for the Whitecaps. And
Michael,
yeah, I don't think the production staff was paying attention. Really.
Michael, you're forgetting the most important thing about this whole game, and I probably should know this, but I don't, so I'm going to ask. Where was the Krylatch?
oh, he's suspended for yellow card accumulation.
Oh,
Yeah, he was out of the game.
yeah, I know he wasn't in the 18. I just didn't know why.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Hart told me that yesterday, and I was like, "Ooh, that plays into the Whitecaps' favour."
Sure.
Let's be honest. RSL looked terrible without him.
That's yeah.
Yeah,
They look worse than terrible.
Yeah,
That was.
Rustinek didn't play well either in this game.
I mean, credit to the
No.
team for getting the 3 points and reacting this way, but I don't rate this game.
No, it was
Because-
horrible. It was
I think I got a bit too
RSL
carried
was-
away, and then like our good friend Manuel brought me back down to earth by saying RSL are terrible. It's like, well, yeah, they are. Also, Justin Meram had that bizarre
Yes.
miss. Two things about that. One, it was a bizarre miss, and then the referee gave a corner.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell was going on there, but
Yeah.
that was
That should have been one.
Season.
It should have been 1-1 at the half.
I put that miss worse than Wando's in front of the goal because, well, maybe not, but it was against us. If that was us, that would have been in our miss of the season, 100% from a Whitecaps point of view. Great save by Max off the free kick initially, though, so we'll say that.
You can't miss an open net like that.
I mean, it wasn't a great first half from the Whitecaps, but they did turn it on the second half, and for all as bad as RSL were, you can only beat the team that's in front of you. And
That's true.
They still have to do it, and they did it.
Right.
White, who again I thought was awful, but he made it 3 goals in 3 games. I'll take it.
That goal, like, man.
That's what happens when you get a guy in the 6.
Is that the dodgiest keeping you've seen in a
Seriously,
while?
man. Yeah.
Like, what was that? What
No,
was that?
I've seen worse.
When's the last time you saw worse?
I've seen worse this whole year. There's been a lot of dodgy goalkeeping this year.
Like that.
A lot.
That was.
Oh
like,
no,
that
there
was
has been
horrendous.
some. The guys just letting balls run under their feet, and
There
everything.
has been
Let's-
the goalkeeping this year has been really ranked.
Haiti, Canada.
Haiti. I was just gonna say that. Haiti.
Oh yeah.
Don't forget
I
about
forgot
that poor lad.
But
No,
that
if you
was,
watch a lot of MLS highlights, there's goalkeeping is not.
Yeah,
that great.
there's been a lot of howlers this year, but I mean White again. So if he keeps doing that, I'll take it.
So
But I would like a bit more from him.
An own goal and then a gift.
Yeah, I really don't know what to take out of this game. Like, great reaction again. They had to do it, get the 3 points, but it's really not the way it looks like. 4-1 and all. You would think.
There was
No,
someone
this is-
involved in Whitecaps media, I won't say who, but described Brian White on Thursday night as a player that plays like he has 2 fire extinguishers for legs. Just because he doesn't move, I guess, much and is slow. But yeah, I mean, Gold made it 3-0 in the 64th minute. Another header.
Off another not great giveaway. But
But a great ball in from Javane Brown. who
Jingles with a move at half.
outstanding.
Yeah, it was nice.
Jingles move as well. Like,
Yeah.
well, now there's another one. Leo Owusu seemed to be out of favour for whatever reason and has been outstanding the last few games. Again, questionable as to why Mark maybe didn't use him. But Gold, who's
No, but
not
wasn't
known
he
for his
injured?
heading, well, he was coming back
No.
from an injury, but again, it was a slow comeback.
Yeah.
Gold now has 4 goals in 6 games, and I'm still giving him 2 assists. That's what you want from a designated player. I mean, I thought he'd be more a creator and chipping in the odd couple of goals, but hey, just you get those goals coming in, that's fine.
Well, he's had to score them because there's no Cavallini, so he has to.
Well, he's
play
been
it
in the
more
right
in
place at the
attacking
right time as well.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like we talked about before, he reads the game and the space in the game better than
No,
any other player on the pitch.
Yeah.
And so when a Whitecap's wide open on the flank, they can see a wide open, their wide open number 10 gliding through free.
How many times is it going to be left wide open?
Michael, he's not been in the right place at the wrong time. He's been in the proper place at the proper time. It's like where you're supposed to be when those crosses come in, not like he's So
that's fair.
That's my issue with the Whitecaps have been all the time. They never have players in the right spots when the ball comes in, like the proper spots. So that's where he's been these times.
Did you say you're giving him 2 assists in this game because of both corners?
No, 2 assists overall in his games because he didn't get that assist as a corner. Oh, did he get an assist tonight as well?
Yeah.
Oh,
the flow corner.
Flow corner,
Of course, which we'll talk about next. So, I mean, Flo got his first goal, 69th minute. Nice. First goal as a Whitecap. First MLS goal, I checked it out, since July 2018. And before he came to the Whitecaps, before the season started, I watched an interview that he did in February. And he had said what he was targeting this year was to try and get those goals back because he hadn't scored for a couple of years. He wanted to get the goals back. Just took Ryan Gold to send the ball into his head. I was impressed, though, with Flo tonight. I want to keep him in there. I'd like to see him and Godoy playing together. It looked like an ultra clean sheet was on, Steve, but we'll just have to settle for the clean sheet, the 4-1 loss. 4-1 win. Julio, after Metcalf with a great effort off the crossbar, I felt for Patty. He just stuck his leg out. That could have gone anywhere. Off the crossbar, straight into the path of Julio. Yeah. Now, 4-1, great, but 4-0 would have been even better for goal difference. If we'd only won 7-0, we'd have been at 0 goal difference. So we're getting that goal difference down, so that is a start. But my question, which I guess we've kind of covered a little bit, was it that the Whitecaps were good, or were RSL just really that bad?
It's got to be the latter.
Yeah.
But it has to
do with a little bit next week with Austin. But having watched Austin Dallas tonight and them letting 3 goals in a 3-minute spell at the end of the first half, maybe that won't be the good test either.
Yeah, but you have to, I understand you guys saying that, the RSL was that bad, but if the Whitecaps don't play up to their level, they're not going to beat even the bad RSL team.
Yeah.
So,
but the Whitecaps didn't play at their level. They
played it. I think they played quite fast. I thought they played quite aggressive. I thought they played at a good level tonight. And as I said, you still have to beat the team in front of you.
I know. Yeah. I thought they played fine. I think they could, playing like this, they could have beaten a lot of teams in MLS, not just RSL.
No. Other teams don't miss that empty net in the first half, and it changes the game.
I've seen a lot of teams miss that.
I looked at the California Classic yesterday. I felt like, again, I'm watching a different league, to be honest.
But they beat one of those teams. Yeah, but they beat one of those teams in that California Classic.
Right, but 8 out of 10 as Access says, out of the 10 games, they would have lost that 8 times.
Also, that LA derby showed how bad those 2 defenses are as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I've said it before. I don't think the Whitecaps are that far off from making the playoffs. They're not that far.
I think you're right.
Now. You're right about that.
You're right, Steve. But
I'm not just talking about points wise. No, because there's not very many good teams around. Like good teams are in the teams that are like 1 to 6 or something. Like you could put some of them great with some of them good, but like I said, the Whitecaps are in the 7 to 10 range.
Yeah,
for teams.
Well, let's just round this part off. I'll just give you quickly the standings, and we're not going to do our usual delving into MLS results, but I'll give you what the results were affecting the Western Conference teams. It was 3-3 between LAFC and LA Galaxy. Houston went down to a 2-1 loss to Minnesota, so that was good for the Whitecaps. Yep. SKC won, Colorado won. They're both
good result.
Playoff bound, so it didn't matter. Dallas 5, Austin 3. Interesting game. I watched the first half of that, and I thought, oh, 4-1 at half time, sort of finished 5-3. It's like, wow. And then I had the Portland-Seattle game on. Not a great game, but Portland won 2-1, which was not, 2-0, which was not a great result for the Whitecaps at Seattle.
It's always nice to see Portland beat Seattle. And to see, do you see the Colombian's tears, his whining in the game? It was nice.
Yes. He did whine.
I think a lot of had to do with the addition of Freddie Juarez. I think his addition has probably rattled Seattle.
Oh, it must have, because they're like, oh no, he doesn't win many games. Now we've brought him in. He's like
the goals for Portland were both very nice.
Yeah, they were. One came in stoppage time, just at
Blanco, and I forget who got the second.
Cake.
The chip at the end was nice.
Yeah.
So what this leaves the standings, the top four, I'm still not sure about the Galaxy, but I think the top four should be safe in the playoffs. Seattle on 42, KC 40, Colorado 38, LA 36. Colorado still have 2 games in hand.
I think you could bump up Minnesota into being safe.
Probably. They're 5th and they've got 31. And then you've got amazing. It's like 6 teams, 3 points separating them. And it's Perm 2 from 6, basically, for these last 2 playoff spots. Because Austin and Houston, they've gone now, as far as I'm concerned.
Uh-huh.
Portland and Salt Lake, 6th and 7th on 27 points. Whitecaps now 8th, 26, with Austin coming up next weekend. So you've got to think, here we go, into the playoff places. San Jose on 26, Dallas on 25, LAFC 24. How low can they go? I don't think they'll probably go much lower than 11th, but you never know. I mean, it's on, guys. I've been saying it's been on. Mark was saying it was on. Didn't help him, but I think they can do this.
Out of all those teams, I can't see LAFC not make the playoffs, seriously. Like, the way they've been playing, though.
I don't know, though, because
I see
goals in so much.
I see them missing it.
You think so? Yeah.
Yeah, their home form, it's not a fortress anymore, despite that brilliant atmosphere. It's, I don't know.
While their record is 669, I still don't think that's very nice for them.
No. But that's it for our talk about the present. We're going to look to the future next, as we look to see what might be next for the Dos Santos brothers and who might be next for the Whitecaps. And we'll be back chatting about that after this.
Hi, I'm Ryan Gold, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
There is no one to blame for this. It's been 5 or 6 days since it ended. Silence kills me in all the right ways. I just watched myself die and I liked it. I've still got some guts to spill. If you will listen, I will soak into your carpet, then flow through your ceiling. I've still got some time to kill. If you are willing, I've said nothing of importance, so goodbye, good luck, and good evening.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part from Spokane, Washington, I'm keeping it local, from their second album from 2019, Sleeping Through a Car Crash, that was Scared of Bears, with goodbye, good luck, good evening. And I'm playing that for Marc and Phil Dos Santos. We wish the pair of them nothing but the very best for the future here at AFTN. I'm pretty sure our paths will cross again somewhere down the line. And I think, just to speak on a personal level now, I don't think it's any secret to know that I had a very good relationship with the pair of them, especially Marc. I'll genuinely miss my football chats that I had with him. We talked about so much stuff, not just Whitecaps and MLS, but just football in general. And Marc was always good. He always had time for us. He always spoke and gave us great chat for the show. I wish them both the very best. I'm sure the three of you guys also do as well. But what will the future hold in store for the pair of them? Will they stay together or will they go their separate ways? When I spoke to Marc last year during the pandemic break, and we talked about his relationship with Phil and having your wingman, your right-hand man there that was your brother, because you know it's a guy that you can trust. He said then that he felt Phil was the better coach. And he thought that he should branch out on his own sooner rather than later. Now, he's been an assistant this whole time. Before he came to the Whitecaps, Phil was an assistant at Indy 11 under Martin Rennie. And then that was when Marc had gone to LAFC as assistant. Phil's got his UEFA A licence. Do you guys think they'll stay together? Or do you think this is the time for Phil to maybe show what he's got?
I personally could see Phil Dos Santos at a CPL level or USL level as a head coach. I think that would be a great next step for him. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's probably, especially if Marc feels that way, that I think he will try to get him to look for another position somewhere else and kind of, like you said, branch on his own. Because there's so much time you could be the assistant.
Yeah,
I think it might be. I don't think he might get to CPL level unless there's some opportunity. I think it might be a little bit lower, maybe like a university or some lower level, some lower level than where he can be in the kind of the conversation. But I think he's right now, because he has all the assistant coach experience, I think he'll probably need a year or two somewhere lower. But I think he's definitely a candidate in the future for sure.
Oh yeah.
I don't see an opportunity. I don't know of an opportunity where they go somewhere together, although I can't see them working together again in the future. Obviously, Marc long term one day would love to be involved with the national team, which I don't think would be a good fit now. It might have been a good fit.
Well, I was going to say, like, has his performance here, I mean, Steve said no in the first part, but has this hit his stock a little bit?
Oh yeah, it has to at least a little bit. But I one of the things I heard people just ruminating over is how long will Mista last in Ottawa? Yep. And is Ottawa a place for one or both or either of them to end up?
That's something I've said to folk for a few months now, when I thought Marc was going to move on. Now, I mean, Marc told us he would like an opportunity at some point to coach overseas again. So, I mean, maybe somewhere like Portugal could be on the horizon for him. But he might have a chance to go away, rebuild, find himself, come back to North America. But if you're looking at jobs and positions within North America, to me, the best fit, and he might see this as a backward step, is Ottawa. Now, he's been there before with the Fury. He took them to a championship. Mista, I don't think, is getting the best out of the squad that he's got. And with them having Spanish owners, I'm sure they're going to be expecting a lot more for their investment than they're currently getting. They're sitting bottom of the CPL standings just now. Him in there, maybe with Phil as his number two, he knows the area, he knows the culture, he knows a lot of those players. I think that is a perfect fit for him if he wants it.
It would be. And realistically, I mean, when you talk about North America, MLS, I can't see him getting an opportunity as another head coach for another club in MLS.
What about Salt Lake?
Not right now.
No.
Salt Lake?
No.
He knows
it down there. He's got his favorite coffee shops.
Right.
The thing is with him, if he's gonna go as an assistant, he should definitely go overseas. You should not stay in MLS as an assistant. If you're gonna go an assistant, try to find, like you said, Michael, somewhere in Portugal, where you can be like kind of create some roots there and create some connections, where eventually you can become a head coach there. How
about I throw this idea at you?
A-League.
No. Oh, well, maybe. End of the season, Bob Bradley sacked by LAFC, or mutually agree to part ways, as I'm sure it would be. He then goes to TFC and gets the Toronto job. And his two assistants are his son, starting off his coaching career, and MDS back as his number two. And then Marc ticks off the set of all three Canadian teams.
Yeah, he could do that because it's obviously closer to Quebec, where his wife and kids could be located. So
that's why I
there's a
think
chance
Ottawa
there.
as well would be a good thing for him
Yeah.
because they can keep close at hand.
Yeah. So I think any one of those opportunities are good. But I think for his own benefit, I think going to, like, he's done coaching in Brazil. He's obviously done it in the lower leagues in the North America. He's been a head coach in North America. Next step up is Europe. And if he wants to become a head coach in Europe, he's going to have to be an assistant there first.
Not
And I feel
necessarily,
like that-
because MDS to East Fife confirmed. I'll have a word with the chairman.
But I do think that, jokes aside, I think that assistant in
Yeah.
Europe would be a good step for become a head coach in Europe.
I think he'd learn a lot there.
The Toronto idea would be interesting, Michael. And yeah, he could do the Sergei Jukanovic or Adrian Khan trifecta there. But when you were first talking there, I was just like, and you were talking about LAFC, I was like, I'm pretty sure he's not going back to LAFC.
Oh, no.
I don't think he has any desire to go back
Maybe
to
he
LA.
can be the person that can turn them around.
No, but I honestly, I don't think he has a desire to go back and coach there.
No. What do you think about the Ottawa thing? Do you think that is a goer? Or another CPL team? Or do you think Mark would maybe look at CPL as going backwards? I don't think he would. I mean, he spoke to us about how much he liked the stadium at Spruce Meadows, and he loved Pacific's stadium as well.
Yeah, I don't think Ottawa is going to be a fit because I don't know if his style clashes with what Atletico Madrid wants, because they're going to definitely hire somebody that fits their model. So I don't know if that's going to be work. But what if an expansion team in Quebec comes up? Maybe we don't know what anybody's timeline is in CPL. But maybe an expansion team could work for him there. But I do think that that he might consider that as a step backwards.
Let me give you this update, Steve. My understanding is that Quebec is further away than you might think.
Yeah, so that maybe might not be
surprising.
the best thing. Yeah.
No, I mean, if they were 2023, you could do a year's assistant somewhere in Europe to just learn new skills and then come back and do that. Or depending when they announced it, he's got time to then build it. But
yeah, he could be the builder there eventually. But I do think like Europe would be a good bet for him at this point.
Wherever they end up, just wish them, as I said, all the very best. And yeah, I will miss chatting to them. And hopefully we can maybe get a chat with them somewhere down the line as well, just to unpack a few things about them moving on. But let's turn our attention now to who the next Whitecaps head coach might be. Now, Axel was asked how quickly he thinks they might fill this position. So they're in no rush, but at the same time, if the right person was to appear in the scene next week, they're not going to say no to that. I mean, there's big questions as to who it's going to be, when it's going to be. I genuinely don't think we'll see it before the end of the season. I think Vanny gets given the end of the season as interim. But I guess if the right person was there, then that might be pulled the trigger a little bit quicker. I don't know. One of the contradictions, as we've talked about from Axel, talking about his press conference, he said he hadn't been considering, hadn't given any thought or done any research on a replacement for Marc because he wasn't planning on getting rid of Marc. But then he also said they had a list of 20 plus candidates. So you don't just suddenly come up with that within an hour of letting your coach go. So I was a bit confused by that, or did I pick him up wrong?
That's where I was a little confused about that too. They might have always, like, you know how you have transfer the players already listed. Like Robbo's told us that before in the past, that he always has a list of people potentially, and they probably always have these kind of lists where they have potential people that would fit their model. Yeah.
How much stock do you put in the next coach having MLS experience? Now, Axel talked about it didn't necessarily matter if the head coach did, as long as the coaching team in general did, which could mean you keep Ricardo Clark around, or you bring in another assistant from a club at MLS. There's not a lot of former MLS coaches out there, I think, that we would necessarily want. In the article I put up, the only one that sprang to mind was like Jason Kreis, who's an assistant just now in Miami, but he also has the US under-23 team.
Yeah. The assistant coach thing, or the assistant experience thing, was interesting. I don't think Ricardo Clark ticks the boxes that
Too early for
that he was
yeah.
talking about, because he was talking more about, like, sure, Clark knows the league, but I think Axel was talking more about like someone who knows the archaic rules around, you know, structuring the team and the mechanisms and all that kind of stuff.
That's Jeff.
Right.
But I think Ricardo Clark was also brought in for the developing too.
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
when
he's
Houston,
tasked
he
with
was
working with the young guys.
Right.
Yeah, Houston was that's what his main focus was, to develop young players, and he's kind of probably wants to use that in order to get to the next level.
I mean,
But looking at the history, I mean, how well have these coaches without MLS experience been doing?
well, that's the thing, because
Yeah.
it's like if you ask the fans, they want a name, or at the very least, someone that's got a proven track record at a high level. They're not, so many of them are saying they don't want someone who has done it at the lower level, like USL or CPL, and haven't been tested at this level, because we've been there, we've done that, and it hasn't worked out.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
necessarily
that's-
agree with that, though.
But that's a perception issue they're dealing with, right, Michael? Like, they've gone this route now 3 times in a row with a coach who is not tested at a higher level other than second or lower divisions in North America, right? And so I feel like they can't go back to that well just simply from the perception perspective. And I think they get that. Maybe they don't.
Well, it's going to be interesting if they can land their first or second choices this time, because we know that has been an issue before.
Well, they better not do what they did with the number 10 and say like, yeah, we got our top
Next
3
one.
all sorted out. And then, they're down the pecking order at 6 or 10 or whatever.
I mean, Axel said they're looking for a coach that fits the culture and style that they've currently got. Not quite sure what that is exactly, to be totally honest with you right
Which
now.
culture is he talking about?
Yeah.
Which style? that he wants him to meet his 4 cornerstones. Steve always loves the cornerstones. To defend as a team, give up one goal against, to outperform the opponents with physicality, fast transition, and pressing.
Well, the cornerstones, weren't they pillars before? Or foundations?
I
It
think
seems like
Pillars. They're pillars.
The pillars are
Yeah,
the
they were pillars
cornerstones
before.
now.
No, they changed it to cornerstones clearly now. So I don't know.
He's wanting a player developer, Steve.
Yeah,
A guy that makes players better and teams better.
I'm just wondering if what are the one thing I wanted to find is the cornerstones the same as pillars, because I could have sworn that those were different.
Well,
so what they had
Pillars
before.
are more in the middle, whereas corners are at the edges. So
I know exactly, and so does
a
that mean we're gonna have a
contradiction.
weak?
It's contradiction.
Yeah, does that mean we're gonna have a weak midfield?
Again?
Oh, true. And pillars do crumble, but do cornerstones crumble? Not as much. And are you just putting what you've got just on the edge of the cornerstone, just like the ball on the edge of the corner flag?
Yeah.
All these questions. We'll ask Axel all this when we get him on the show next. But Axel did say that he's looking for a guy that has a record of doing all these things previously.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I threw some names out in my article. Some were more kind of fantasy or tongue-in-cheek than others. I just wanted to kind of find 5 different options, like Canadian guys, someone that's worked with Axel before and MLS experience, all that kind of stuff. And a wild card, which I threw in of Eddie Howe, who genuinely I would love here, because what he did at Bournemouth with young players and a small budget was tremendous. Could he do that here?
That's not going to happen.
Well, this is a question I'll throw to you. I want to get rid of this thing about the Whitecaps are cheap and they're not spending money, because they have spent money. So let's get rid of that. That was the Whitecaps of old not spending money. They have spent money on players. Salaries, not so much, but they have spent money on transfer fees. Is this the time to actually splash the cash and get in a manager that's going to cost a lot of money? Like a guy like Eddie Howe, and again, I'm just using him as an example. He would cost to get, but I think they might need to do that at this point. The rumours were they had offered Bob Bradley a big $1 million salary or something to get him here when they ended up getting Robbo. I feel if they want all these things that Axel says, they have to spend money to get that on a coach.
But my
Yeah.
understanding, Michael, though, was if you want the other side of that story, is that Bob Bradley like took the interview, but had never had any intention of coming here.
That's the
Yeah,
thing.
the-
Could
and
you
the
see
Whitecaps, what the Whitecaps got out of it was they showed that they were trying to hire somebody big, and
Yeah.
then they had to settle for. So I was more of a
Did
like
he
a
hear
PR
Drogba all
move.
over again?
Yeah,
Yeah, would you? I mean, looking from a coach's perspective, from that kind of level, they look at the Whitecaps as an history and be like, "Oh boy, like coming to MLS. If I come to MLS, I mean, why the Whitecaps?"
But
I mean,
But-
at the
but they
same
have-
time, would they maybe not look at the Whitecaps as a project that looks exciting just now because of like Ryan Gauld and this run that they're doing?
no. The thing is that they are a little bit more attractive than they have been in the past because they do have pieces now, and if they show that they are willing to even spend more and get in other pieces, then maybe it is an attractive position for some coaches. But I don't know. I don't think they're for me. If they do go after somebody name wise, it'll be a former MLS coach. But other than that, it's going to be somebody that nobody knows from like Germany. I don't think they'll go for another inexperienced Canadian coach. They've already done that with Marc Dos Santos, and they'll move on to a different kind of profile
Yeah.
at this point.
I'll throw some names at you and just get some thoughts. Now, starting off with inexperienced coaches then. Pamadou Ka. Now, Manuel asked Axel about Pa specifically, and basically Axel said, yeah, he's the kind of guy that we're looking for, but probably with more experience. Whether Pa would even want to come here when he's still finding his feet and doing well and building something really good there. But his players would do anything for him.
they run through walls for him.
Yeah.
They run
Do
through walls.
you, Michael, was that one of the awkward parts of the interview for you? Like, it was awkward for me when he was just like, we want to play like Pacific play.
Exactly.
Yes.
He,
Like
I
what?
want my team to play like Pa's team.
Yeah.
Like whether or not they actually have interest in him, it was just awkward to say that to a team you
100%.
just lost to.
Yeah.
Like, it was bizarre.
Yeah, that was. But I mean, he would be a good choice, but he's inexperienced. This is his first coaching gig. The guy in the CPL that I genuinely think would be an exciting prospect is Forge FC's Bobby Smirniotis. He's landed back-to-back championships, so he's not a flash in the pan. He's done well in the international stage in the CONCACAF League. He also is a guy that through Sigma has brought through the likes of Kyle Larin, Tejon Buchanan. These guys have all come through Sigma, so he's got a record of developing young guys as well. I don't think that's as big a risk as maybe some of the, like a Martin Rennie, for example, that we brought in years ago. Or
But-
Robbo.
Yeah. In comparison
No,
to him, yeah. Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
I was going to say that he's probably, you're like David was saying there. In comparison, he's probably very much less a chance to take on a coach like that. But they've already done something similar to that. That's why I don't think they'll do it again. It's only because of the past failures that they probably won't go that route.
And does he have any MLS experience or ties to
No,
MLS?
zero.
Forge,
that's-
Forge was his first proper
Okay.
senior coaching gig.
So that's what Pa played in the league again. Was an assistant coach in the league. I mean, that's what he would have.
Yeah, so I guess Pa does have that MLS background as well. And he was Alan Koch's assistant in Cincinnati and yeah.
And he's well respected within the league. I mean,
I don't see
split.
I don't see a current CPL coach that they would take a chance on.
No.
Zach, what if I said to you, Mauro Biello?
I don't see that as being a fit. I don't think he's going to want to come here. He knows Marc Dos Santos very well. He knows the whole coaching staff that Mark brought here, including Vanny and Yusuf and whatever. Like I don't think he's coming here anytime soon.
I just thought I was an interesting name. I mean, he's obviously been 3 seasons with the Impact, but...
I have an interesting one for you guys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go for it.
I like Marius's tweet. What about assistant coach at Manchester United? Coach and Creole. No chat.
No.
Martin Pert. Hey, he's qualified.
He
I mean-
also did not leave here on very good terms.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying he's at the highest level. Not as a coach.
True.
I mean,
He
Yeah,
doesn't
I-
like me,
I know.
so I hope he doesn't come back.
Naveed, there's no way that.
no way. I know. But I mean, yeah. It was interesting.
I'll
With
have to find a new club to cover if he comes back.
Was it that bad?
Well, we had a bit of an altercation, verbal altercation at training one day. He didn't like the criticism. Yeah, he didn't like the criticism that
right.
given him. Or our speculation in answering people's questions from the mailbag about Robo's future that he took really personally. And I was like, did you listen to the show? And he's like, no. I was like, well, how can you go on about it then?
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a fun
the one thing I was concerned about is that with Stephen Caldwell no longer coaching the Canadian team, that he would be a candidate. So
yeah, well, I mean, there was some good news this week at least. So
yeah.
What's that? What is that about?
I don't know, but something's obviously behind that.
Maybe
he said something on commentary or something that annoyed somebody.
As a Canadian, I'm not displeased by this.
No, get these Scots out of these positions.
I wouldn't be surprised if a German. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if a German coach comes in. Seriously,
no, I wouldn't either. Well, I'll throw this name at you then, because somebody mentioned this on Facebook in reply to one of my comments, and I gave it some thought, and I was like, you know what, that is a good shout. Daniel Stendel. Don't know how familiar you are with him. He was at Barnsley. He then went to Hearts and got them relegated during the pandemic.
It's a fit.
Because they got relegated and they just called the league, whereas they were on a run of games. So he then got sacked because he had an out in his contract that if they got relegated, he could walk away. He's currently with Nancy in League 2, I guess it is, because I think that's second tier.
Yeah, he's on a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
He played for St. Pauli.
Yeah,
but he also played for...
But what he did at Barnsley is the kind of stuff that Schuster's wanting here.
He also played for HSV, so.
But I think he would be a good shout, and going from second tier France to here would be an upgrade for him. I think he'd be up to it.
They'd have to
maybe
pay
not the most charismatic figure, but
they'd have to pay
any Germans. They'd have to pay a transfer fee, you think?
Yeah, he's under contract, so.
Well, that's fine. That's what I'm saying. Splash the cash.
Well, maybe they might have it. The coaches have outs always, depending on where they want to go.
Just go on a losing run. He'll be out before you know it. We can have our own Nancy boys here. That'd be great. Before we go, any other names you want to throw at me?
Anyone in BC? Any BC connections? Is there a BC coach out there?
I don't think Frank Gallup's coming anytime soon.
What about the Minnesota? No, the Minnesota United. What's his name again?
Mark Watson?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
None of those guys.
I honestly think it's going to be either MLS, somebody MLS certified, like Jason Kreis. And Kreis kind of sounds German, I guess, a little bit. And if you put the right pronunciation on it, or it's going to be somebody from Germany themselves.
Yeah.
Carlo Ancelotti loves it here. If only he hadn't gone to Real Madrid. Maybe we can still tempt him. Who knows? But let us know your thoughts. Who would you like? Is there any wild card names out there that you could see, or someone in MLS? Should they try and approach somebody that's currently coaching in MLS and say, look, we'll give you a bumper deal, make the sideways move? If we're doing fantasy booking, Oscar Pereira, he's a guy I'd love here, but he's not going to come here.
Look at the assistant coaches at all these MLS teams. Maybe he's one of those guys.
Let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts as well, and also let us know just your thoughts on how this week has played out. But that is it basically for the show, but we're going to end with this week's wavelength, and I thought we'll end with something a little bit upbeat, since there's been a little bit of sad chat in this episode. So we're going to a song from 2014. It was brought out kind of as a World Cup single. It's a song about growing up, loving football, and the passion that never goes away. That's what the Dos Santos brothers have. That's what we've all got. You as listeners, I'm sure you've got that passion as well. This is a band called Puffin Ethics, and a song called Wish and Chips.
We was like kicking man, playing in the pocket, stay practicing free kicks man till it got dark. Had one of those big orange mobile phones. My mum would call me and say, Chris, you should be home. And I was all like in my memory, Mum, I will be home when I wanna be. Perhaps it's not so close to reality, but I was a pretty good kid, usually did what she told me. At a time when my life was ruled by match of day, Wembley 2-side and primary school, by my reading tier and the Premier League. Football I lived, ace, spat, thought and breathe. All I cared about was the 4-4-2, no worries, ethnic dilemmas or political coups. I had punch-ups based on bad tackles. They lasted 2 minutes, man, they didn't even matter. When I was young, I was kicking right, 'cause what I knew in my heart was true is that football is my life. And now I look back, my heart still shines that bright. Chase the dream as I follow my team up, and everything's alright. Without fish and chips on a Friday night, but I couldn't wait for Saturday's morning. Like the smell of that grass and the tan in my boots, laying it off to Ollie man so he could shoot. Things would never stay on the pitch. In the class after lunch and we would whine about it wasn't a goal, 'cause that was a foul. That it wasn't in, debate could last for hours. Playing playground matches and discussing at school. It wasn't trivial, it was what our lives were for. A new kid in class, that was transfer news. That's where our blood actually ran in reds and blues. Being a footballer, it was my pipe dream. When you're in it, it's crazy how big the park can seem. People so often say that childhood is a bubble, but that's some serious playing Wembley doubles, man. When I was young, I was kicking right, 'cause what I knew in my heart was true is that football is my life. And now I look back, my heart still shines that bright. Chase the dream as I follow my team up, and everything's alright. Hey, not everything's alright. Not everything's alright. And everything's alright. The atmosphere winning, the crowd is swallowed up. Chanting with like minded, throwing hands up. Winning titles are fighting to stay up. Either way, we cannot get enough. Come on, you watch for blues, let's just throw it up. Come together in a sport that we love. Next Saturday we'll still be watching for us, right? 'Cause every single day and night, football is our life. When I was young, I was kicking right, 'cause what I knew in my heart the true is that football is my life. And when I look back, my heart still shines that bright. Chase the dream as I follow my team up, and everything's alright. Man, everything's alright. Nah, everything's alright. Yeah. Man, everything's alright.
From Bristol, England, Puffin Ethics, Wish and Chips from 2014, rounding off tonight's AFTN Soccer Show. We hope you've enjoyed it. Just before we go, let everyone know where they can find you online, any final thoughts and anything you've learned from this fascinating week, Naveed.
You can find me at nmachinchi on Twitter. What I learned this week, or last week I should say, is well, it's interesting. Whitecaps front office orders food from Uber Eats rather than DoorDash. That was something very interesting to me.
Yeah, there'll have been a phone call on Friday afternoon. Steve.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at WhitecapsBeat. And what I learned is football is very crazy roller coaster of a sport. One day you're burning somebody's jersey, the next day you're celebrating their return.
Okay, but for me, you can find me on Twitter at Zachary AM. There's a lot of things that were great about this week. A couple things I want to say is it was so good to see so many people at the match on the weekend, or sorry, on Thursday.
Oh yeah.
Ran into all those people you said, Marius and Weber and supporters from Pacific, and all the players and some of their friends and family. Whatever, it was great. I ran into Marcel's wife and dad having sushi before the game. It was awesome. I also ran into T-Mart. T-Mart was there with Massimo, and he was wearing a Real Madrid jacket, and I said, "Hey, T-Mart, I didn't know you support Real Madrid. Like, why do you support Real Madrid?" And he said, or Massimo, I think, said, "Oh, because of some Portuguese guy who played there." And I was like, "Oh, you're a big Luis Figo fan."
Yeah.
Figo fan.
Well, T-Mart is Portuguese.
No, I know, but he was talking about Ronaldo.
Obviously, yeah.
Oh, I didn't get that joke because I
maybe not. Anyways, Michael, the thing I learned this week is football is to be told, not to be sold.
Yes. Wonderful quote from Pa that you will have heard on our extra podcast. And if you don't subscribe to that, you really should.
$30 it was a good one. It was a good one.
A year. Yeah. Now, we had so much stuff that I had planned to talk about in the show because we're going to talk about the Canadian World Cup qualifiers and had some audio from John Herdman and stuff like that. So there might be another extra podcast that's coming out before that because Canada, of course, do play 3 games coming up. It all starts off. I'm very excited for it. And, of course, next Sunday, the Canada-US game is on TSN. Folk can actually watch the game. Tremendous.
Just like the Pacific Vancouver game was?
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to say. One of the things I learned this week is don't trust Shaw TV listings that had the Pacific Whitecaps game apparently on TSN 4. It didn't happen. Huh. The other thing I learned this week was roads in Victoria just go to dead ends. If you take a wrong turning, you are screwed. But I'm Michael McCall. You can find me on Twitter at AFTN Canada. Read our stuff away from the numbers, aftn.ca. Give us a like, follow, subscribe, all that kind of stuff on YouTube. YouTube.com, AFTN Canada. We will be back with a show next weekend. Until then, take care. Thanks for listening. And mon the Caps.
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world, away from the numbers, away from the numbers.